Hello, welcome back everyone. Now we are going through the Indian Contract Act, and in this video we are going to discuss about the types of contracts. Contracts are broadly classified under three main headings: on the basis of validity, on the basis of formation, and on the basis of performance. On the basis of validity, there are five types of contracts: valid contract, void contract, voidable, illegal, unenforceable. On the basis of formation, express, implied, quasi, tacit. On the basis of performance, executed, executory, unilateral, and bilateral. Now we'll see these headings one by one. First one is on the basis of validity. Validity means whether it will be accepted by the law, whether it can be enforced through a court. So on the basis of validity, we have valid contract. First one is valid contract. Valid contract means a contract which will be accepted by the law, which can be legally enforced, is called as a valid contract. And we have discussed about valid contract already in our previous video. We saw around 10 essential elements which are needed for a valid contract. We saw offer and acceptance, free consideration, lawful object, lawful consideration, contractual capacity. We discussed about 10 points, and if all these 10 essential elements are present in a contract, then such a contract is called as a valid contract. An agreement which fulfills all the essentials prescribed by law on the basis of its creation. The law has prescribed certain essential things which must be present in a contract, and if all these essential factors are there in a contract, then such a contract is a valid contract. For example, S offers to sell his car for rupees 2 lakhs to T. T agrees to buy it. It's a valid contract. This is an example for a valid contract. Here you can see offer and acceptance is there, consideration is there, the object is lawful. So if all these things are there, it becomes a valid contract. Next one, void contract. It's just opposite to valid contract. A void contract will not be accepted by the law. You cannot enforce it through a court. Such a contract is called as a void contract. We have already seen 10 essential elements which are needed for a valid contract. Even if one single element is missing, then such a contract will become a void contract. So all the essential elements needed for a valid contract must be present. Even if any one element is missing, then it will become a void contract. For example, if you enter into a contract with a minor or with a lunatic person, then that contract will become a void contract, because a minor or a lunatic person does not have a contractual capacity to enter into contract. So if you enter into contract with such people, then such contracts will become void contracts. Same way, if two parties enter into a contract to buy and sell drugs, or to kidnap somebody, or to smuggle goods, all these are void contracts because the object is unlawful. So you cannot enforce it by law. A contract which ceases to be enforceable by law. Ceases means you cannot enforce it through the law. A contract which does not satisfy any of the essential elements of a valid contract is said to be a void. So if it doesn't satisfy the essential elements needed for a valid contract, it becomes a void contract. For example, a contract between drug dealers to buy and sell drugs is a void contract. Next one is voidable contract. Voidable means it can be made invalid. It can be made a void contract. Voidable contract means a contract which can be cancelled by one party. If needed, one party can cancel the contract. Such a contract is called as a voidable contract. It will become just like a void contract. It will become a void contract. If one party decides, they can make the contract a void contract. I'll give you an example so that it will be easy for you to understand. If a person is forced to sign a contract by threatening with gun, then that person can cancel the contract in future. Same way, if you enter into a contract with a minor, he can later on cancel the contract when he becomes a major. If a party is forced to sign the contract by coercion, undue influence, misrepresentation, fraud, all this we have discussed in our previous video. So in such cases also, the affected party can cancel the contract. For example, A makes some false representations, A cheats B, and B believes it and signs the contract. Later on, B comes to know that A has cheated him. So in that case, B can cancel the contract. So the contract will become voidable contract. An agreement which is enforceable by law or at the option of one or more party, but not at the option of the other or others, is a voidable contract. So if one party decides that let me enforce it, if he decides like that, he can enforce it. Or if he decides not to enforce, he need not enforce it, he can just cancel the contract. This is the result of coercion, undue influence, fraud and misrepresentation. We have discussed about all these things in our previous video. Next one is illegal contract. Illegal contract is similar to void contract. It is not accepted by the law. It cannot be legally enforced. But the main difference is void contract are not enforceable. Just now we saw about void contracts. Void contracts are unenforceable. You cannot enforce it. But illegal contracts are unenforceable and at the same time they are punishable also. Because it's an illegal thing, the parties will be punished. It's a contract which is forbidden by law. Illegal contract means it is a contract to do some unlawful things which is forbidden by the law. If it causes some danger or harmful effects to the lives and property of the people, if it's against the public interest, in all these cases the contract will be called as an illegal contract. To do some immoral act, all those things are illegal contracts. All illegal agreements are void, but all void agreements or contracts are not necessarily illegal. If it's an illegal agreement, definitely it is void. You cannot enforce it by law. But all void agreements are not illegal. Illegal agreement means it is void, means you cannot enforce it. And at the same time it is punishable also. But void agreement means it is not enforceable, but it's not punishable. It's not illegal. Contract that is immoral or opposed to public policy are illegal in nature. Unlike illegal agreements, there is no punishment to the parties to a void agreement. Just now I told you. So for illegal agreements, parties will be punished, but for a void agreement, parties will not be punished. Illegal agreements are void from the very beginning, but sometimes valid contracts may subsequently become void. If you enter into an illegal agreement, it is void right from the beginning. You cannot enforce it by law. But sometimes contracts will be valid in the beginning, but later on it will become void. I'll give you an example. You enter into a contract with a foreigner, and at that time, our country and that particular foreign country, they have a friendly relationship, so the contract will be valid. Suddenly a war breaks out between our country and that foreign country. Now he'll become an alien enemy. That other party, the opposite party, will become an alien enemy. Means a person from a country, with which we have a war or with which we have a conflict. So in that case, the contract between you and that foreigner will become a void contract. So it was valid in the beginning. Later on it became void. Next one is unenforceable contract. A contract which cannot be enforced by court because of some technical defects or because of some problems. I'll give you some examples so that you can easily understand. You enter into an oral contract with another person. Later on some conflicts or some disagreements arises between you and that person. You are proceeding to the court. Now it's an oral contract. There is no written proof or evidence. So you cannot get it enforced through the court. It's an example for unenforceable contract. You are buying some land or property, and whenever you buy some property, you must get the contract registered. But you have not registered the contract. And in case, if any one party fails to fulfill the promise, the other party cannot move to the court because it is not registered. So due to some technical defects, you cannot enforce a contract. Such contracts are called unenforceable contracts. Where a contract is unenforceable because of some technical defects. That is absence in writing. It's not in writing. It's only oral agreement. So no written evidence is there. You cannot enforce. Barred by limitation. Barred by limitation means in some cases, if you want to file a case in the court, or mostly for all disputes, if you want to file a case in the court, there is a time limit. You have to file the case within that particular time limit. But you have crossed that time limit. You didn't file the case within that specified time limit, means the court will not take that case. So legal action cannot be taken against because it has exceeded the time limit. You have crossed the time limit. So you have to file the case within that particular time limit. If that time limit is over, the court will not take the case. That is barred by limitation. If the parties perform the contract, it will be valid, but the court will not compel them if they do not. So it's up to the parties whether to execute the contract or not, but you cannot get it enforced through the court. It depends upon the parties. Next one is on the basis of formation, express contract. Very easy. If the terms and conditions are expressed either in writing or orally, it is called as an express contract. So everything, all the offer, acceptance, terms and conditions, everything will be either in oral or it will be in writing. Such a contract is an express contract. A contract may be word spoken or written. According to section 9, insofar as a proposal or acceptance of any promise is made in words, the promise is said to be expressed. The word in words means it can be either oral or written. Example, P says to Q, will you buy my bicycle for ₹1,000? Q says to P, yes. So this is an example for express contract. Everything is in words. Implied contract means it will not be expressed, but it can be, you can understand it from the behavior of the parties or from the situations, circumstances. It's called as an implied contract. For this, I've already told about implied contract in my previous video. For example, you go to a hotel, you can order the food which is given in the menu, and the supplier, the hotel owner, is bound to supply the food that you have ordered in the menu, and same way you must also pay the bill for the food that you have taken. Now an implied contract arises between you and the hotel owner, between the customer and the hotel owner. Implied contract is one which is not expressly written but understood by the conduct of parties. So it's not expressed, but it could be understood from the behavior of parties. Where the proposal or acceptance, if any promise is made otherwise than in words, the promise is said to be implied. So an agreement is created, but it's not in words. Such type of contracts are called as implied contracts. For example, A gets into a public bus. There is an implied contract that he will pay the bus fare. So if you A gets into a bus, the thing is, the driver will drop him in his destination. Wherever he wants to get down, the driver will drop in on the route. Wherever he wants to get down, the driver will drop him in the destination and he has to pay the fare. So an implied contract arises between the passenger and between the bus owner. Next one is quasi contract. Quasi means it's almost similar to, it's almost like a contract. I'll give you an example for a quasi contract, so it will be easy for you to understand. Now, I'll give an example. Some fire accident is happening in your neighbor's house, you imagine, and your neighbor is not there. He is somewhere out of station. Now, what you do is, you call to the fire station and you're taking all efforts to set off the fire, and you protect his house from fire. Now, your neighbor is coming. He must pay the expenses incurred by you to save his property. You have spent some money protecting his house. So your neighbor must pay the amount. He is liable to pay the amount. Even though there is no contract between you and your neighbor must pay that amount. He cannot say that I didn't enter into a contract with you to protect my property. Who asked you to protect my property? He cannot argue like that. As a person with a common sense, you have taken all efforts to protect his property. Now your neighbor is bound. He is liable to pay the expenses incurred by you to protect his house. So here a quasi contract arises between you and your neighbor. Means a contract which is created by law. Quasi contract means a contract which is created by law. Even though there is no express contract between you and your neighbor, there is now a contract arises by law. Now your neighbor is bound to pay the amount. If he fails to pay, you can go to the court and you can get it enforced by the court. The court will order the neighbor to pay the amount. So that's an example for quasi contract. Same way, you find a person falling sick on the road. You are taking him, or an injured person on the road. You take him to the nearby hospital by a taxi or by an auto, and you are paying some medical bills for that person. Now that particular person, that sick person or that injured person, he is liable to pay the amount to you. Whatever expenses you have paid for him, he is liable to pay that. He is liable to repay that amount. So a quasi contract is formed between you and that sick person. So quasi-contract is a contract created by law. Actually, there is no contract. It is based on the principle that a person shall not be allowed to enrich himself unjustly at the expense of the other. So a person cannot take any benefit from the expense of other person. In other words, it's an obligation of a party to another imposed by law independent of an agreement between the parties. Even though there is no agreement between the parties, one party is liable to pay the other party. I'll give you another example. A courier man delivers a product to a wrong address, wrongly delivers it to a wrong address. Now that person, what he must do, immediately he must call that courier man and he must return the product, or if he fails to do so, he uses that product. Okay, so in that case, what that person must do is, he is liable to pay that amount to that courier man. Even though there is no contract between that person and the courier man, still then the person has to pay the amount of the product to the courier man, because that courier man has wrongly delivered. So he cannot unjustly say that I received it, he wrongly delivered, so I used it, no problem. You cannot say like that. You are bound to pay the amount. Next one, tacit contract. Tacit contract means it's similar to implied contract. A contract is said to be tacit when it is to be inferred from the conduct of the parties. It's just like an implied contract which we saw now. For example, obtaining cash through automatic teller machine. Obtaining cash through automatic teller machine means when you go and withdraw cash from an ATM, automatic teller machine. Now, a tacit contract arises between you and that particular bank. If in case of any disputes or problems, you can go to the banker and you can ask. So, a tacit contract arises between you and the banker. Sale by fall of hammer of an auction sale. In an auction sale, once I strike the hammer thrice, automatically an agreement arises between the buyer and the seller. So all these are examples for tacit contract. So hope you all understood till this. We'll continue the next heading in our next video, since already the video is too lengthy. Hope you all understood. Thank you.